I am Joseph Oinderson, esteemed critic. I'm here to tell you what to think. When I was a kid, I loved superheroes. Growing up with Batman, Superman, Justice League, Batman, I learned a lot. But as I grew up and watched movies with these characters, I realized just how bad most of these films are. Something was off. I realized what after watching 2012's Avengers. There was a sense of incompleteness I was left with after seeing the movie, and after deep meditation, I constructed a thesis that proved to be completely true. The movie doesn't work. I'm not saying we should dig up Roger Ebert to give his opinion on Avengers because this is one of the best stories I've seen, but the superhero side is a total failure. Avengers is a science fiction superhero movie. It is the final movie of Phase 1 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It was released in 2012. It uses Marvel characters. It's a movie. I'll wait on spoilers in case you want to watch the movie yourself, but there's a huge objective problem that needs to be discussed, subjectively, in my opinion. In order to be a superhero movie, it needs to be exactly like The Dark Knight. That's what superhero movies are. Avengers does not follow this specific parameter of judgment. It's not dark, it's not broody, there's no angst or drama, and there's no clever and manipulative villain who plays the heroes like a fiddle. There are no dramatic speeches, there's nothing spooky in it, in my opinion. You would think that a movie with superhero characters in superhero situations against a supervillain would make it a superhero movie. Well, turns out no, not at all. At least not for me. Subjectively, in my opinion. If you're not of an IQ of 400 like I am, you're going to need me to explain this to you. What we need to do is use my chosen intellectual tool: perspective, investigation, systems, speculation. Or PISS. Using PISS, you can double or even quadruple your narrative tripling. It will give you a greater comprehension of the ergonomic structure of the written narrative. Using my perspective, I can extrapolate that because Bruce Banner was recast, I can't connect to him. The logical fallacies that come up trying to reconcile that two different actors played the same character completely detracts from the capacity of the character to be relatable. I can perspectivize that Tony Stark is quite simply too overly intelligent to even be realistic. But the worst comes from Thor, who's so beyond being a superhero that it completely breaks the movie. Never once in the movie does a character end up in a situation that significantly overwhelms them, and because of this key fact, it makes it impossible to sympathize with anyone, and thus creates a ludonarrative dissonance between the audience and the characters. Nick Fury has no explained motivation for anything he does, creating a cataclysmic chasm that drives me away from the experience. I was left scratching my head after coming back from getting my Hot Pocket because there's no reason Nick Fury lied to the Avengers about Coulson's death. How am I supposed to understand the perspective of the character if nothing they do is explained? That's bad writing. Using my investigation, I can interpret the plot elements that don't work, such as all of them. Picking apart the systems of the story, I can construe a tentpole analysis of the film. There are way too many references to previous movies, and while the movie does a good job in establishing the characters, their personalities, their abilities, their relationships, and their individual arcs separately from the previous movies, I found the fact that it connected to 6 previous movies to be an unavoidable fact. I didn't watch the previous movies, so I was mad when I didn't understand all the references. I had a friend explain these references to me, and it only served to damage the overall experience. It wrecks the entire structure of the movie because it builds on what happened in previous movies. It is unlike The Dark Knight in this regard because that doesn't require a previous movie to be watched to understand the full context. Avengers' entire structure is built on the idea that it's a crossover between the previous movie's characters, very similar in concept to crossover events in comics. But this is a movie, not a comic, so it doesn't work. You can't cross over things in movies. This is why being a superhero movie is bad. It tries to be like superhero comics and utterly fails. This is shown by the lack of success from the movie. Finally, through speculation, I can discern the deeper philosophies of the story and the underlying narrative facets. There's a certain degree of pessimism throughout the movie. It fails to work well with the optimistic nature of the story. quote, superhero movies have a lot of problems when it comes to tone. I can only assume that this is the result of trying to insert optimism into an authentically bleak world, in my opinion. There's a significant dearth of meaning to be found in the details of the story. I spent hours just trying to analyze the deeper themes of Avengers and found nothing. I've used every tactic I can think of: reader response theory, queer response theory, strange loop theory, string theory, and the theory of relativity. Nothing came up. This is how I determined through speculation that there's nothing behind this movie and no meaning or themes to be found. And that's the piss of Avengers.
So good, slice and dice.
So upon further scrutiny, it's clear that Avengers fails upon the very ground where it attempts to build its house. There's a truly fascinating incompetence in how this film applies its attempt to fit into genre. This is where I conclude that Avengers is not a superhero movie. It's not super, it's not heroic, it is merely superhero themed. It has superhero characters with superhuman powers in situations involving aliens, gods, spies, and hyper-advanced technology inspired by superhero comic books. But this is done in the same way that other genres theme their movies: science fiction movies, steely movies, spooky movies, pew-pew movies, rooty-tooty, cowboy-shooty. This movie is basically lying to you about its genre, in my opinion. The most superhero movie I've seen in years isn't actually a superhero movie at all. Although it does have some superhero elements to it, they aren't a core part to the experience. I know this is a completely ridiculous example, but stay with me. This movie manages to capture all the spirit and elements that makes a superhero movie a superhero movie. And it's not even a superhero movie. It shows a true struggle of a superhero that is portrayed as a person, someone you can truly relate to in every way. You have long, rambling philosophical speeches. You have characters dying left and right. It has eggs used as a metaphor. That's how deep and intelligent this movie is. People call this movie confusing, but I'm really surprised to find that no one talks about how Thor came back after being killed by Loki. It was never explained how Thor got stabbed to death, then showed up again later in the movie. I've only ever seen the movie once, and I probably only saw about half of it because I kept leaving to get food. But my point still stands. Avengers doesn't do what it needs to make things clear. Does this mean that I want every movie to fit my exact desires and expectations? Yes, but it's not that simple, in my opinion. These movies also need to meet an extremely specific and obscure set of criteria for me to grant them the title of superhero movie. In order to be a true, real, genuine superhero movie, it must have goodly written characters and themes. This leads to the ultimate conundrum of miscalculation faux pas. These characters aren't human. You can't connect to them. It's because of the superhero characters that it doesn't work. They can do things you can't. They have powers you don't. Unlike Batman, who is a human and relies on his intelligence and technology to fight spooky evil guys. I cannot relate to the characters in Avengers. With no humanity in them, I find them unrelatable. In fact, no person on Earth can find them relatable or likable. It's literally impossible, and if you disagree with me, you're wrong. In my opinion. Thanks for getting to the 9-minute mark. I'm really glad to see you're able to comprehend my incredible intelligence. You know who lacks intelligence? Everyone in this movie. They all do moronic things because the stone is making them stupid. Fury allowing himself to be shot? Tony not having his newest Iron Man suit completed by the time he encountered Loki? Tony and Steve arguing? All stupid. I wasn't really paying attention, but using my galaxy-sized brain, I deduced that the stone makes people near it stupid. In my opinion. The real problem is that the superhero bits get in the way of the good stuff, of the parts where people are dying or making speeches. It gives you those emotions, but fails to fulfill them, because that's what superhero-ness really is. It hits you with surprising potency and leaves you feeling hot and cold simultaneously. A good superhero movie really engages you with narrative, Yoshi's Island style. Here are some movies that, like Disney's The Avengers, are not superhero movies. These are not superhero movies. I need movies that will show the internal struggle of the boundless psyche, show normal people fighting against impossible odds, have someone dressed like a bat. I just don't like them, therefore they fail to account for the true requirements to be a superhero movie, in my opinion. Many people say that just having superheroes in a movie makes it a superhero movie. I reject this idea because I don't have to do that with The Dark Knight. I can appreciate the flawless storytelling in The Dark Knight because it's perfect. None of these movies are like The Dark Knight. They're tedious and make me not care. I can enjoy Avengers for its action and superhero themes, but not for its actual superhero-ness. They're just wasting the potential movies have to fully realize what we've all wondered when reading comic books. How can these movies make me feel anything? I haven't seen Infinity War, but I know Tom Holland is still alive, so of course Spider-Man can't die in Infinity War. It's just common sense. The same thing applies to Avengers. You have to take me seriously because I'm incredibly well respected. More people will watch my video on why Fallout New Vegas is worse than Fallout 76 than the number of people who will breathe this year. Yeah, I'm that good. I even went with the first draft of this script because it worked so well. Next time you're watching a supposed superhero movie, think to yourself, are you appreciating the actual superhero-ness of the movie, or merely its superhero themes being applied? And remember, no matter how superpowered a superhero character is, there is no way to dismiss their lack of humanity. You are a person separated from the superhero movie. I can't relate to them, so neither can you. Subjectively, in my opinion. Give money to my Patreon.